What if your bloodline was never yours to begin with? When a cryptic letter leads Callie and Liv to the remote island of Jarrett B, they think they're uncovering a lost family secret. Instead, they awaken something ancient, something that remembers. Trapped between ritual, mutation, and the whisper of the sea, the girls must face a terrifying truth. The island doesn't just take, it transforms. This is not just a survival story, it's a descent into a legacy carved in bone, and it's still hungry. The house at 413 Elmswood Road stood like a mausoleum in the middle of the Ohio flatlands. Squat, tired, and quiet in all the wrong ways. To strangers, it looked empty, like it had surrendered to time years ago. But to Kelly Monroe, it was the only place left in the world she could call hers. She had returned to Elmswood after 10 years away, her mother's funeral having unlocked the final deed to the old farmhouse. It wasn't sentiment that brought her back, just necessity, a bitter divorce, a job that vanished in the same breath as the tech startup that promised her the world, and a bank account that now laughed back at her like an empty joke. So she came to the only place that wouldn't charge her rent. It was colder than she remembered, not just weather cold, but cold in its bones, the kind of stillness that pressed into your skin, whispering in low tones when the wind had no business talking. The first night, Callie heard the scratching. At first, she blamed a raccoon, maybe a possum. It was an old house, after all. Things moved, creaked, lived where they shouldn't. But by the third night, she could trace the sound. It started under her bed and migrated slowly to the corner closet, where her mother used to keep the cedar chest. The scratching would pause when she turned on the light, but never when she held her breath. She didn't mention it when she met the sheriff that morning, an older man named Dwight Sanderson with a limp and a weathered Stetson. He greeted her at Poppy's Diner like they were in a movie about small towns and returning daughters. He was polite, of course, but his eyes carried the kind of sorrow people wore when they knew more than they let on. "I remember your mother," he said, sipping from a mug that read Elmswood County Fair, 1998. "She used to come by once a month asking about old records, land deeds, some history on your great-grandfather's time as township supervisor." Callie stirred her coffee. She was always obsessed with that old stuff, never let it go. The sheriff gave a short nod, his eyes tightening. "Some things around here don't like being forgotten." She raised an eyebrow. "Meaning?" "Nothing," he said quickly. "Just, this town's full of stories. If you're staying at that house alone, might be smart to keep a light on. Or two." That was the first odd thing. The second was the church. She had passed it countless times growing up, but the Elmswood First Congregational always felt like background noise. White clapboard, tilted steeple, and a parking lot cracked with weeds. But now, every time she drove past, she noticed a shape in the belfry, a dark figure, still, watching. Once, she turned the car around and came back 5 minutes later. It was gone, but the bell, old and rusted, was swinging like it had been rung. Back at the farmhouse, she found herself locking the doors for the first time. Not just the front and back, but the cellar as well. The one her mother always told her never to go down into because of soft spots in the earth. It wasn't until she opened the attic that she found the box. A heavy cedar chest, exactly where she remembered it, but smelling different now, like ash and wet soil. Inside, dozens of papers, town records from the 1000 to 800s, a locket with a black and white photo of a girl with a tear in her cheek, and a hand-drawn map labeled Below Elmswood. The map showed a series of tunnels under the township, branching from a root point marked only with a symbol, a circle with 3 slashes through it. Callie didn't recognize it, but she felt it. Like a pressure behind her eyes, a dream trying to claw its way back into memory. That night, the scratching got louder, not frantic but deliberate. It didn't stop when she turned on the light. Instead, it seemed to pace, 3 steps, then pause, scratch, 3 steps, then pause, scratch. She knelt to the floorboards and whispered, "Who's there?" And something whispered back. Not in English, not in any language she knew, but she understood the feeling behind it: hunger, cold, memory. The next day, she drove to the Elmswood Historical Society, a 2-room converted library run by a woman named June Kelly. June remembered her mother. Everyone in this town did, and no one wanted to talk about her. She was obsessed with the old tunnels, June said, wringing her hands. Kept saying there were things beneath the town we weren't supposed to wake up. Callie showed her the map. June paled. That symbol. I've only ever seen that once, on the back wall of the old coal shaft behind the church. Your mother made me promise never to speak of it. Why? She said it was a seal. A seal for what? June looked her in the eyes. Or what our ancestors buried alive. That night, the scratching turned to knocking. Once, twice, 3 times. And when Callie looked beneath her bed, the boards weren't just moving, they were breathing. Callie backed away from the floor, heart thudding like a drum in her chest. The words, "The blood remembers," were still vibrating through the wooden boards, low and wet, like they came from lungs filled with soil. For a few long seconds, she stood frozen, listening. But nothing followed. No more whispers. No scratching, just silence so dense she could hear the hum of her own blood in her ears. She grabbed her phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam trembled as much as her hand, cutting across the old planks. The dust, the jagged lines of the wood grain that now looked warped. No, not warped, shifted. As if the house had exhaled and wasn't sure it wanted to breathe back in, she forced herself to move. First to her closet, pulling out the heavy mag light her mother used to keep in the basement. Then down the stairs, flicking on every light switch as she went. Each bulb glowed like a dying candle, flickering just once before holding. The hallway groaned under her weight, like the house was annoyed at her being awake. She stopped at the cellar door. Her hand hesitated over the knob. That door hadn't been opened in years, and she could still hear her mother's voice in the back of her head. That place wasn't meant to be dug up. The roots go too deep. Callie swallowed and twisted the handle. It stuck at first, then gave with a sharp pop, like something had been holding it shut from the other side. The smell hit her first, earthy, metallic, tinged with rot. She descended the stairs slowly, the maglite beams sweeping side to side over shelves filled with old jars, rusted tools, spider webs fat with time. But it was the far wall that stopped her cold. There was something carved into the concrete. A circle, 3 slashes, the same symbol from the map, etched deep and dark, like it had bled through the stone. Around it, dried red streaks, years old but still clinging. Blood? She stepped closer and noticed something else. The wall wasn't flush. At its base, a small square opening, barely 2 feet wide, gaped like a mouth, half buried in the foundation. It was partially covered by a broken crate, as if someone had tried to seal it hastily and forgot to finish the job. Inside, just blackness. But something stirred. She heard the whisper again. Not words this time, but sound, wet, dragging, like fingers brushing over gravel. She ran. Back up the stairs, slamming the cellar door shut, locking it, and pushing a chair in front of it for good measure. She didn't sleep that night. She sat at the kitchen table with every light in the house on, the mag light and her phone close by, and the old locket from the cedar chest in her palm. The girl in the photograph had the same eyes as her mother, same soft curl to her lip. On the back of the locket, barely visible beneath the tarnish, was an engraving. To Marietta, from the ones who remain. Morning came gray and windless. A strange fog hung over Elmswood, thick and low, swallowing the fence line and the tops of the cornfields. Callie needed answers. She didn't want to be the next Monroe woman to go mad alone in that farmhouse. She drove straight to the church. The front doors were locked, the paint on the white panels peeled in long brittle strips. A sign on the steps read, "Sunday service suspended until further notice," in red block letters. But when she pressed her hand against the door, it creaked open like it had been waiting. Inside, dust floated like ash in the air. The pews were empty, the altar draped in a sheet, and then she saw it, behind the pulpit where the stained glass should have been, a mural painted directly on the wall. A sprawling root system in dark ochre and crimson, twisting through soil and skulls, converging at a single point. The same symbol circle. 3 slashes. She stepped closer. At the base of the mural, in a curling hand, someone had written, "We buried them deep, but they remembered the way back." She turned to leave and stopped. At the far end of the nave, beneath the bell tower stairs, a figure stood in shadow. It didn't move, didn't speak, just stood, tall and still, like it was carved from the darkness itself. "Hello?" Callie called, voice dry. The figure tilted its head slowly, and then it whispered, not aloud but inside her skull. "The seal is thin. The breath below is rising." She stumbled backward, knocking over a hymnal stand, then turned and ran, footsteps echoing through the church like gunshots. She didn't look back until she was in the car, and by then the fog had rolled in, thick as milk. The figure was gone. The church bell rang behind her. Once, twice, 3 times. That night, the scratching returned, but not under the floor this time. It came from inside the walls. The pattern was the same, 3 scrapes, pause, 3 more. Except now, it was everywhere. Living room, kitchen, bedroom, and then the knocking began again. Callie paced with the flashlight, eyes wide, lips whispering her mother's name like a mantra. She knew what she had to do. The tunnels. She couldn't sleep. Instead, she found herself redrawing the map from memory, overlaying it with what she remembered of Elmswood's old coal routes. Her mother's notes in the chest had mentioned shafts sealed in the 1890s after a collapse. The township had declared them off-limits. But the maps didn't match the historical records. Something had been erased. Callie found herself back at the Historical Society the next morning. June Kelly wasn't there, but the building was unlocked. Inside, amid the rows of dusty binders and yellowed microfilm, she found what her mother must have seen. An article from 1893, mine sealed after collapse, 4 dead, 3 never recovered. It listed the location, Black Hollow Shaft, north of the church cemetery line at the edge of town. No one lived there anymore. Callie went anyway. The hollow was just a depression in the earth now, ringed with brittle trees and a rusted chain-link fence. A wooden sign still stood crooked near the entrance. Danger. Unstable ground. But the earth wasn't unstable. It was breathing. She felt it beneath her boots, the same rhythm. 3 pulses, then pause. She moved closer to the fence. Beyond it, under the bramble, a narrow stone entrance lay half buried, like a door forgotten by time. And carved into the lintel above it, barely visible, "This is where they wait." It's strange how quiet the world becomes when you stand at the edge of something forgotten. Callie Monroe stared at the half-buried entrance beneath the brambles, her breath fogging in the cool morning air. The stone archway yawned before her, carved into the slope like an open wound left to fester. Roots hung like limp fingers over the threshold, and beneath them, blackness stretched deep, unnatural, unwavering. She crouched, brushed away more of the dirt and debris. The inscription still chilled her. "This is where they wait." She should have turned back. Instead, she opened her backpack and pulled out the flashlight, a coil of rope, and a notebook filled with her mother's erratic scrawl. In it were fragmented notes, cryptic observations, and a single underlined sentence. "If the land speaks, do not answer." Callie gritted her teeth and ducked inside. The air changed immediately, thick, damp, and oddly warm. Her light beam swept over slick stone walls, glistening with condensation and something darker that might have been mold, or might not. The passage was narrow, forcing her to crouch as she moved forward. Every sound felt amplified. Her own breath, the crunch of gravel beneath her boots, the faint drip-drip of water echoing from deeper inside. After about 20 paces, the tunnel opened up. She stepped into a chamber, no wider than a small living room. The floor was uneven, broken in places. Old wooden beams, support struts, maybe, jutted out at odd angles. Some cracked clean in half, others fused into the stone as though the earth had swallowed them halfway and changed its mind. At the center lay a circle of ash. No dust, no rubble, just ash in a perfect ring, with a pile of dried bones at its core. Callie's breath hitched. She didn't move closer. Something told her not to. Her mother's voice, maybe, or something older, deeper, nestled in her marrow. There was writing again, this time on the far wall, scratched in with some jagged object. The first came by blood. The rest followed the roots. She took a quick picture, her hands shaking, then moved toward the rightmost tunnel. There were 3 paths branching from the chamber. She marked the wall beside the one she'd chosen with red chalk, just like her mother used to do in her hiking days, and pressed forward. This corridor descended, tight and crooked, like a rib cage turned inside out. The air grew colder the farther she went, and wetter. Her boots began to squelch in thick mud that clung like tar, and she heard it again. Not whispers, not scratching, laughter, childlike, mirthless, echoing far ahead, then suddenly behind her. Callie spun around, light darting through the dark, slicing nothing but air. She gripped her flashlight tighter and backed against the wall, heart pounding against her ribs like it wanted out. She waited, and when nothing came, she kept moving. Slower now, 1 foot in front of the other, each step a gamble. Finally, the tunnel ended in another room. This one had stone pillars, columns that looked Roman in design but weathered like they'd been buried for centuries. At the center stood a basin, carved from obsidian or something like it. Its surface shimmered, though no light touched it. As she approached, the black liquid inside stirred. Callie stopped, breath caught in her throat. Then a face broke the surface, her mother's, but not alive, not recent. It was Marietta's face as it had been in the funeral casket, pale, sunken, lips stitched shut, except now the eyes were open, and they were staring. Callie screamed and stumbled back, dropping the flashlight. It clattered across the floor, flickered, and finally steadied on a nearby alcove. In it was a wooden idol, about 2 feet tall, carved with brutal precision, a figure with no face, only a gaping mouth where the eyes should have been, and horns curling back like roots. In its chest was a hollow cavity, and inside a bundle of something wrapped in cloth. Callie crawled toward it, breath shaking, fingers numb. She peeled back the cloth. Hair. Dark, matted, tied with a red ribbon, her mother's ribbon. She almost dropped it, but her gaze caught on something else. Tucked beneath the idol, a page. Torn from a ledger or diary, yellowed and blood-stained. She unfolded it and read. They feed it memory. Hair, bone, blood. The island has teeth. We tried to silence the roots, but they sang louder. Monroe women hear it clearer, and Callie, she must never come back here. There was no signature, but the handwriting was familiar, her mother's. Callie sat back, mouth dry, the words blurring as tears welled in her eyes. She wasn't just drawn here, she'd been warned, but too late. The darkness around her shifted, no longer passive. It felt aware. Callie grabbed the page, stuffed it into her pack, and turned to leave. But the tunnel behind her had changed. It wasn't the same corridor. The chalk mark was gone. The curve was reversed, and there were no footprints, hers or otherwise. She wasn't alone. A low hum rose in the walls, like thousands of mouths whispering beneath layers of soil. The roots overhead began to twitch, and from the end of the corridor, something began to crawl. Callie backed away, slow at first, then faster, until the walls around her seemed to lean in. The thing crawling toward her wasn't visible yet, but she could hear it, skin dragging on stone, joints cracking with every motion. It didn't move like an animal, it moved like something remembering how to crawl. Her flashlight flickered again. She slapped it once, twice, and the beam steadied just long enough to catch a slither of something pale and wet, disappearing behind a crooked wall corner. Callie didn't scream. She didn't have the breath. Instead, she turned and ran blindly. through a narrowing tunnel, across a floor slick with mud and something thicker. Her boots lost traction. She hit the ground hard, shoulder first, but scrambled back up. There was no logic to the layout of these tunnels anymore. They twisted like intestines, wound by madness and buried in silence. She passed another chamber, this one circular, lined with jagged roots stabbing through the stone like ribs. In the center stood a decaying cradle, rocking gently. There was nothing inside it. She didn't stop. Another passage. Another breathless sprint. Her lungs burned, and her limbs screamed, but fear had made her body numb to everything else. Until she found light. Not daylight, firelight. She skidded into a large cavern, lit by torches stuck into crumbling sconces along the wall. The flame was blue, not natural, and it didn't flicker. In the center was a long, flat stone table stained by years of dried blood. Surrounding it were stone statues, 10 of them, all identical, all carved in the shape of kneeling figures with their hands raised, as if in supplication or surrender. At the far end of the cavern, a woman waited. Not her mother, not human. She wore the tattered remains of something ceremonial, a dress woven from hair and bark, bones sewn into the hem. Her eyes were gone, replaced with black pits, as if the sockets had never grown eyes to begin with. Yet she turned her head as Callie entered. "You were warned," the woman said. Her voice came, not from her mouth, but from the stone itself. Callie froze. She couldn't speak. The air had gone thick again, like syrup, and her legs had turned to anchors. "You carry the blood," the voice said. "The seed remembers. It calls you by name." Callie managed to step back. "Who? What are you?" The statues behind her shifted. The woman's neck cracked to the side as if straining against ancient muscle. "You came looking for her. Marietta, the one who broke the pact." Her mother's name stung like a slap. She heard the roots, but she turned away. She tried to burn the garden. "I don't know what that means." She failed. The cavern trembled slightly, dust sifting from the ceiling. Something massive moved above them, or perhaps below. "She left you with the map," the woman said. The words, but not the understanding. "She left me nothing," Callie said, anger cutting through her fear now. "She left me alone." The woman didn't respond. Instead, she pointed toward the blood-stained altar. On it, laid neatly and still wet, was a photograph. Callie stepped closer despite herself. It was old, worn at the edges, a black and white picture of a younger Marietta, no more than 19, standing at the same altar, flanked by people Callie didn't recognize. In her hands was a wrapped bundle, identical to the one Callie had found inside the idol. There was something written on the back. Callie turned it over. "The first offering." She cried the whole time. Her stomach turned. "You carry her echo," the woman said. "You carry her debt." "I didn't choose any of this." "But you came?" the voice replied, gentler now, almost maternal. "They always come." The statues began to move. Not quickly, no, but deliberately. One by one, stone limbs cracked and twisted, shedding ancient dust. Their faces remained blank, their hands opened, revealing something in each palm. Teeth. Not human teeth. Callie backed toward the tunnel. "They returned to feed the earth," the voice whispered. "And now, so will you." A hand clamped around her ankle. She screamed, turned, and saw the thing that had followed her. It was small, child-sized, but its limbs were too long, bent the wrong way. Its skin was the color of fungus, and where its face should have been was a writhing nest of roots. It didn't speak, it only gurgled and tugged. Callie kicked. The thing shrieked, recoiling, and she sprinted back into the dark. No path, no chalk, no rope to guide her. Just the weight of breath and heartbeat, and the distant memory of her mother's voice. "Don't let them touch the skin." She didn't know how long she ran. Minutes, hours? Time had broken here. Eventually, the tunnels grew narrow again, claustrophobic. The walls pulsed with life now, like a throat swallowing. She could hear the roots singing. Their voices weren't words, they were wants. Hunger, grief, the memory of things buried but not dead. She collapsed against a curved wall, chest heaving. Then she saw the door, wooden, crude, lashed together with vine. It looked like it didn't belong here, like something stolen from a fairy tale and dropped into a nightmare. She opened it. Beyond was a stone stairwell spiraling up. Light, real light. Callie climbed. Her body didn't feel like her own anymore, but she climbed. At the top was a trap door. She pushed it open and was nearly blinded by sunlight, grass, air, the sky. She stumbled out, fell onto dirt and leaves and rolled onto her back, gasping. But the clearing was unfamiliar. She wasn't where she started, and carved into the nearest tree, still dripping sap like blood, were the words, "Welcome to Jari." Somehow, the sky still looked normal. Callie lay there, blinking against the sunlight, half expecting it to peel back and reveal something rotten beneath. The clearing smelled like wet leaves and copper. Her palms were slick with blood, some her own, some she couldn't identify. The word, "Welcome to Jarrett," carved into the tree, stared back at her like a cruel joke, fresh sap oozing like it had just been etched. She stood slowly, joints aching like she'd aged years underground. Every breath was a battle against the bile rising in her throat. Her backpack was gone, her phone was gone. The only thing that remained was the small, cloth-wrapped bundle, somehow still in her jacket pocket. Still damp. The forest was too quiet, no birds, no insects. Only the wind brushing through the trees like fingers searching for skin. Callie staggered forward. It didn't take long before she noticed the shift. The trees looked wrong, taller than before. Bark stripped in patterns like crude runes, spiraling up into the canopy. Some had no leaves, only black moss draped like hair, paths split without logic, looping back in ways that made her stomach churn. But the worst part was the way the ground pulsed beneath her feet. At first she thought it was her imagination, but then she paused, crouched, and laid a trembling hand to the soil. It was breathing. Something below. Something vast. Callie stood, backing away instinctively, and found herself face to face with a stranger man. Mid-40s, tall, with a salt and pepper beard and eyes too calm for this place. He wore a dark vest, boots caked in red dirt, and a necklace of teeth that didn't look human. "First time above?" he asked gently. Callie froze. Who are you?" "Name's Reed. You're not the first to come up from there," shaking. She didn't move. "How do you know I came from down there?" He pointed to the moss on her boots. "Only grows inside the catacombs." "You live here?" He nodded. "Everyone does. Everyone left anyway." "What is this place?" Reed studied her for a long moment. "You really don't know, do you?" She shook her head, the taste of panic rising. "You're on the eastern ridge of Jarrett Island. That hole you crawled out of? That's the old root temple, the one we stopped using." He said it like it was a church, not a tomb. Callie gripped her arm, shivering despite the sun. "I wasn't trying to find it. I just followed. My mother left a trail." That caught his attention. "Your mother?" "Marietta." Reed stiffened. The name clearly meant something. He exhaled. "You'd better come with me." The village, or what remained of it, was tucked into a basin of black stone cliffs, camouflaged beneath hanging vines and rotted tarps. Wooden huts slouched under years of moss and dampness. Smoke drifted from one or two chimneys, and Callie counted maybe a dozen figures moving about. Some old, some her age, all gaunt and quiet. They stared as she passed, not with suspicion, with something older, like they were trying to remember if they had once known her. Reed led her to a hut near the edge. Inside it smelled of herbs, soil, and something sour. "You hungry?" he asked, lighting a small oil lamp. She nodded, too drained to argue. He handed her a bowl of something thick and beige. It smelled like roots. She gagged at the first bite, but her body craved it, and she finished in silence. When she was done, Reed sat across from her. "We don't get many from outside anymore," he he said. Not since the 90s. The military swept the Western Bay, said it was unstable terrain, blew up the lighthouse, sent patrols, then they just stopped. Callie leaned forward. My mom, she came here around that time, didn't she? Reed nodded. She came with a team, pretending to be researchers, but they weren't. Not really. She was the only one who made it out, barely. She never told me anything, just left. Reed looked at her like someone examining a wound. There's a reason for that, he said. You're not just her daughter, Callie. You're her link. She blinked. What does that mean? He reached beneath the table and retrieved something wrapped in oiled cloth. Unfolded, it revealed a notebook, weathered, torn, and unmistakably familiar. Her mother's. Callie's hands trembled as she flipped through the pages. Symbols, maps, sketch diagrams of rituals, tunnels, something called the Blooming Pit. She left this behind when she fled, Reed said. We kept it safe. Callie found a page with her name scribbled on it, over and over. She knew I'd come back, she whispered. Reed nodded. She didn't just break the cycle, she delayed it. Callie's eyes lifted. Cycle of what? A silence fell over the room. Then Reed leaned closer, voice hushed like a prayer. This island isn't just cursed, Callie. It's growing, feeding. It's alive, and every few decades it demands renewal. She stared at him, heart hammering. What kind of renewal? Reed hesitated. We don't call it sacrifice. That word's too simple. It's more like substitution. Something must stay so something else can leave. That's the rule. And my mother? She traded blood for time, gave up what the island wanted. But now, the roots have remembered. They've reached for you. Callie stood. I didn't agree to anything. No one does, until it's too late. She backed toward the door. Reed didn't stop her. He just said one more thing. The festival's tomorrow. Don't drink the water, don't sleep outside, and whatever happens, whatever you see, don't answer if something calls you by your full name. Callie fled the hut, her mind a whirlwind. She ran until she reached the edge of the cliff overlooking the sea. The island was quiet, too quiet, and far in the distance, barely visible through the mist, she saw something move between the trees. A shape, tall, watching. Callie didn't sleep that night. She sat inside one of the empty huts Reed had let her borrow, if it could be called that, and stared at the fire until it turned to ash. Every creak of the wooden beams made her flinch. The wind outside wasn't just wind. It carried voices, laughter, a hum that burrowed beneath her skin. She kept the small cloth bundle from the tunnel close, but even that pulsed with heat now, as if something inside it was waking. Around 3 a.m. the drumming began, distant at first, like it came from under the earth, a hollow rhythm. Thump, 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 thump. It was slow, deliberate, and growing louder by the second. Callie rose and stepped outside. Torches had been lit around the village. People, more than she'd seen during the day, emerged from huts, faces painted in black ash, bodies draped in veils stitched with feathers, teeth, and bone. Some had no eyes. Some walked on all fours. They didn't look at her. They moved as one, toward the eastern ridge, toward the roots. She followed. Her breath fogged in the night air. She walked behind them, heart pounding. She knew she should turn back, hide. But something, maybe in her blood, maybe in her name, pulled her forward. They reached the tree line, and then, beyond it, a field she hadn't seen before. The grass was unnaturally short, the soil dark and wet. At its center, a monolith of twisted wood and stone, grown together like bone fused with bark. It throbbed with light, red, then black, then red again. The crowd formed a circle. Reed was there, standing atop a platform, arms raised. The time is upon us, he declared. His voice was different, hollowed, like someone else was speaking through him. Tonight, we open the vein. Tonight, we honor the pact. One must remember, and one must descend. The people began to chant. Callie backed away. What the hell is this? She whispered. A hand caught her wrist. She nearly screamed until she saw the face. It was Marcy. Dirty, thinner, bruised, but alive. Don't move, Marcy hissed. It'll see you. Callie's jaw trembled. How? How are you here? No time. They brought me in 2 nights ago. They think I'm part of the exchange. What? But before Marcy could explain further, the crowd parted, and from behind the monolith, 2 figures emerged. One was young, no older than 20. A boy, trembling, painted in ochre and white. The other was ancient. Skin like parchment, hair matted with moss, eyes like pinpricks of light. He held a staff carved with spirals. They walked together toward the center of the circle. Reed spoke again. The seed must return. The old man raised the staff and struck it into the earth. The ground split. A narrow hole yawned open, lined with roots that moved like fingers. A stench rose, metallic, fungal, deep. The boy screamed. It didn't matter. 2 villagers grabbed him, bound him with vines, and lowered him into the hole. Callie's stomach turned. We have to stop this, she whispered. They'll kill us, Marcy said. They tried to make me drink something, said it would make me more fertile for the island. Callie's breath hitched, then she saw something worse. From the monolith, slowly, agonizingly, emerged a new shape. It looked human at first, but its proportions were all wrong. Arms too long, spine bowed like it had never stood upright. Skin blackened, veined with glowing red. It had no face, just a slit where its mouth should be. And when it stepped into the torchlight, the chanting stopped. The crowd knelt. Even Reed. Callie didn't move. It turned toward her. She could feel it, not just looking, but recognizing her. The creature hissed. Reed rose again. The old blood returns, the fruit of the broken promise. All eyes turned to Callie. She stumbled back. Marcy grabbed her hand. Run. But it was too late. Roots burst from the ground, snaking around their legs. Villagers rose, advancing. The creature began to walk toward her, each step warping the ground, leaving behind patches of fungus that pulsed and steamed. Callie pulled Marcy free and darted into the trees. They ran. Branches slapped their faces. Roots grabbed at their feet. Behind them, howls erupted, human and not. Callie could barely breathe. Where are we going? There's a dock, Marcy gasped. West side. They don't guard it. Reed said the currents make it impossible to leave, but a scream cut her off. One of the villagers, barefoot, face blank, lunged from the brush. Marcy shoved Callie away, took the brunt of the tackle. They hit the ground. Callie turned, grabbed a rock, and struck the attacker in the head. Once, twice, again until he stopped moving. She helped Marcy up. They didn't speak, just ran. It wasn't long before they reached a clearing, a shallow inlet with a rotten dock and a half-sunken canoe. Lightning cracked across the sky. The rain began. They climbed into the canoe. Callie grabbed a rotten oar. We row west. Marcy nodded. As they pushed off, something screamed behind them. A shriek, sharp, inhuman, echoing across the trees. Callie didn't look back. They rode into the blackness for what felt like hours, but then the water began to rise. Not waves, the sea itself. The canoe rocked. Beneath them, shapes moved, glowing, spined, long as train cars. And ahead, just visible under the flashes of lightning, something vast loomed beneath the surface. A mouth, a city, a structure? Callie stared in horror, and then the canoe stopped moving. The water had turned to something thick, like blood. Their oars didn't work, Marcy screamed. Roots surged from beneath, grabbing the canoe, dragging it backward. Callie held on, but her fingers slipped. She fell into the water. It wasn't water. It was warm, breathing, alive. As she sank, something opened its eyes beneath her. Not one, dozens, and all of them had her face. When Callie opened her eyes, she wasn't underwater. She was inside something. The walls pulsed around her, fleshy, ribbed, humming with low-frequency vibrations that made her molars ache. A sickly green light glowed from veins that ran across the ceiling. The air was warm, thick, and stank of rot and iron. Her clothes clung to her like they'd been soaked in syrup. She sat up with a gasp, hands slipping on the slick surface beneath her. It wasn't ground, it was tongue-like, textured and undulating softly, like it was breathing. Callie looked down at herself. The bundle from the tunnel was gone. Her hands were stained red. Her veins glowed faintly. "Where the hell am I?" she whispered. But her voice sounded swallowed, distant, like she was speaking from inside her own chest. She tried to stand, but the floor shifted beneath her. Something far below responded. A rumble like a whale's moan. She froze. Was it aware? In the distance, if distance even existed here, she heard footsteps. Wet, bare, and something else. Chimes. Metallic. Random. Like wind brushing through rib cages strung on wire. Callie turned. From behind one of the curving, bone-like arches, a figure approached. Thin, naked, translucent skin veined with glowing coral. No eyes. Its face was stretched, melted. And yet, it smiled. "Callie," it said, though its mouth barely moved. "You've arrived early." She stepped back. "What are you?" It tilted its head, considering. "I'm what you left behind. I'm what they fed. You were never supposed to be born outside. You were a promise, and they broke it." More footsteps. Callie turned to see another figure approaching. And another. Soon she was surrounded. They were all variations of her. Some older, some deformed, some skeletal. All smiling. One reached out and touched her cheek. She flinched, but its hand passed through her, cold and electric. "You have to remember," it whispered, "before the island forgets you again." Her ears rang. The walls around her shifted, and suddenly everything changed. She was standing in a hospital room, except it was wrong. The monitors flickered with static. The windows looked out onto the ocean, miles below the surface. The floor was wet with seaweed. On the bed lay her mother, pale, sweating, pregnant. Callie's breath caught. She remembered this. Not the real version, but the dream she used to have. The one where her mother screamed, not from labor pain, but from something pushing its way out of her mouth. On the screen, the heart monitor flatlined. Callie stepped forward, eyes wide. Her mother sat up and opened her mouth, but instead of words, roots poured out. Tangled, bloody, they spilled onto the floor, crawling toward Callie's feet. "No," she choked, backing away. The lights turned red. A voice over the intercom whispered, "Subject 71A is rejecting exterior environment. Initiate reabsorption." Suddenly she was back, inside the structure. The biome, screaming. The figures of herself were gone, but in their place was a hallway, pulsing, alive. At the end of it, a doorway. Callie ran, her feet slapped against the wet ground. The corridor narrowed, then widened, then coiled upward like a spiral seashell. She didn't know what drove her, fear, instinct, or whatever dream memories had been planted in her, but she needed to get out. She reached the doorway. It wasn't a door, it was an eye, closed, slit-like, surrounded by ridged membranes. She touched it, and it blinked, then opened. Light poured out, gold, white, painfully bright, and then she stood inside a chamber the size of a cathedral, except this one was carved entirely from bone. Thousands of human femurs, rib cages, jawbones, vertebrae, all fused together like coral reef. In the center, suspended from sinew, was a pod. It pulsed, and inside it, naked, floating, was another her, unconscious, sleeping. Callie staggered forward. "What is this?" she whispered. "Why are there two of me? a voice behind her. There are more. She turned. Reed stood at the edge of the chamber, flanked by two masked figures, but this version of Reed looked different. His eyes had gone black. His skin was cracked, revealing something chitinous beneath. "You're not the first, Callie," he said gently. "You're not even the last. You're just the only one that came back naturally." She stepped back. "Back from where?" He smiled and gestured to the pod. "From inside." Suddenly she understood. These weren't clones. They weren't hallucinations. They were returns, failed versions, backups, attempts by the island to reassemble its lost daughter. "I'm not part of this," she said. "But you are," Reed replied. "You're the key, the only one that survived both worlds. That's why it's waking up again." Callie turned. The pod had begun to crack. A low sound like something ancient yawning filled the chamber. The version of her inside the pod opened its eyes and smiled. The thing in the pod smiled with her mouth. Callie stepped back instinctively, bumping into a curved wall of ribs. The breath caught in her chest as the first crack split across the membrane. The pod pulsed, like a cocoon flexing its final stretch before hatching. Her double blinked once, slow and deliberate, as if testing out the movement, then turned its gaze straight at her. "Please don't be afraid," Reed said, voice almost soothing. "This is the part where you remember what you are." Callie turned toward him. "I'm not part of this." "You are the island's inheritance," he said softly, "the one who made it back with both memories intact, the body born above, the mind born below." The pod ripped open with a wet, tearing sound. Fluid spilled onto the floor, thick, amber, almost glowing. The double stepped forward on unsteady legs, trailing cord-like tendrils from its back. For a moment, it looked weak, but then it straightened and stood tall, eyes fixed on Callie. Its skin was smoother than hers. Too smooth, and its mouth stretched just a little too wide when it smiled again. Callie took a step back, then another. Reed gestured toward her. "Go ahead," he said to the creature. "It's time." It moved fast. Before she could run, it lunged. Callie raised her arms to shield herself, expecting claws, teeth, something sharp, but instead, it touched her face, gently. And the world exploded. Memories. Not hers, roots piercing through infant eyes in a glass womb. Screams in fluid. Men in hazmat suits dropping samples into a chamber with fire symbols. A woman, her mother, sobbing on a beach, carving something into her thigh with a shell. Then, oceans of bone, whispers in a language that had no sound, and above it all, a feeling. Hunger. A god thing sleeping deep below the island, fed on generations of children who were not quite children. It did not devour their bodies, only their dreams. The island was not land, it was a skull. Everything Callie thought was real had grown on the bones of something ancient and ravenous. She came back to herself on the floor, sweating, gasping. The clone knelt beside her, its head tilted. "Now you remember." Callie backed away. "I saw," she whispered. "I saw my mother. She gave birth to something else before me." The clone nodded. "You were twin-born. The other one died in the sea. You lived. But the island remembered the other." Callie's stomach turned. "You were incomplete," Reed said. "Until now." She stood shakily, eyes darting between them. "Why me? Why bring me back here?" Reed looked almost kind. "Because the ritual failed last time. You were lost. Now we finish it." Callie stared at him, her mind spinning. It wasn't a cult. It wasn't even science. This was a design. Each generation, the island reached out, pulling back one of its own. Callie had been born on the mainland, but the island had grown her, hidden her half-self here in flesh, in the dark, waiting. The clone took her hand. Callie felt heat, memories, dreams pressing into her skin. "We don't have to die," it whispered. "We just have to become." Then, somewhere in the distance, an alarm began to wail. harsh, mechanical. It didn't belong here. Reed looked up, startled. Impossible, they shouldn't be this close. Yet, before he could finish, a section of the wall burst open. Charlie stormed through, rifle in hand, flanked by Liv, both covered in grime and blood. "Callie!" Liv shouted, spotting her. The clone hissed, stepping between them. Reed raised his hands. "Wait, don't fire, she's not—" But Charlie didn't hesitate. He pulled the trigger. The clone's chest exploded backward in a burst of white ichor. Callie screamed. The thing fell, twitching, and then turned its head toward her. Not dead, not dying, just changing. Its face was melting, shifting into someone else's, her mother. "No," Kelly whispered. Liv ran to her, grabbing her arm. "We've got to go now. The walls, something's collapsing behind us." Kelly looked back once more. Reed was standing beside the fallen clone, watching her go. Sadness etched across his features. "You can run," he called out, "but the blood calls home." Charlie shoved open another doorway, and the trio bolted down a corridor of twitching muscle and bone. Alarms were still howling. The walls were beginning to contract. "Where the hell are we?" Liv yelled. Callie's voice was hoarse. "Inside it." "Inside what?" Callie looked at her, eyes wide, haunted. "The womb." They burst out through a passage lined with razor teeth and tumbled into open air, or what passed for it. They were in a chamber the size of a football field, half flooded, half dry, tubes coiled from the ceiling like intestines. Around them, clusters of glass containers flickered with faint light, each holding distorted human shapes, suspended in fluid. Some were children, some were older, some had no faces at all. Liv gagged. "Jesus Christ," Charlie turned in a slow circle. "This is a goddamn incubator," Callie nodded. "They're trying to grow people. Grow me. Or versions of me." Suddenly, one of the glass pods shattered. Something slithered out. 7 feet tall, no mouth, no nose. Just rows of blinking eyes that opened like gills down its chest, moved on all fours, its skin translucent, lit from within. Charlie fired. The thing dodged, then pounced. Liv screamed, but Callie grabbed a metal rod from the ground and jammed it through the creature's eye cluster. It shrieked without a mouth, high and shrill, and collapsed into a puddle of twitching muscle. They didn't wait. They ran, past more tanks, past more failed things, through tunnels that bent space. At the end of a long corridor, a door stood, rusted metal, out of place, humming faintly. Charlie pulled it open. Inside was a staircase, spiraling upward into darkness. Before stepping through, Callie turned back one last time. On the wall behind them, something had written a word in blood. One she hadn't remembered until now, host. And underneath it, she awaits. There was no sky, only a red light bleeding through the clouds like the island was trapped inside a dying lung. Callie stumbled into the open, lungs heaving, unsure if it was real air she breathed or something the island had tricked her into thinking was oxygen. Behind her, the rusted door slammed shut, sealing off the horrors of the underground womb. For a moment, the three of them stood, in eerie silence atop a cragged stone ledge, overlooking the inner jungle basin of the island. The landscape had changed. Trees were bent unnaturally, their trunks curving like spines mid-seizure. Vines pulsed as if alive, and in the far distance, across a dried-up lagoon, a spire of bone-colored stone jutted into the air like a stake through the heart of the land. "That wasn't here before," Charlie said, wiping blood from his brow. Callie didn't answer. Her eyes were locked on the spire. She didn't know how she knew it, but she did. That was where it would end. Or begin again. "Where's Reed?" Liv asked, scanning behind them. Callie's throat tightened. "We didn't kill him. And I don't think we killed the clone either," Charlie cursed. "Then they're still hunting." "No," Callie said, barely above a whisper. "They're waiting." They moved quickly, skirting the edge of a ridge that led down into the basin. The jungle groaned as they passed, like the island was aware of their every step. Shadows moved too fast in the corners of their eyes. Sometimes they glimpsed things behind the trees. Tall, eyeless shapes, mimicking their gait, copying their movements, but never stepping fully into view. Charlie carried the last rifle. They had only 4 rounds left. Liv clutched a jagged length of rebar like a sword. Callie carried nothing but the buzzing sensation in her skin, the low thrum in her bones, like the island was inside her now. It knew she was awake. They reached the edge of an old research station by dusk. The outer shell had collapsed long ago, vines crawling through shattered windows and metal slats. A sign lay half buried in the dirt. Station 3 Biocontrol/Observation Post. Inside, the floors were soaked. Something dripped from the ceiling. Charlie swept the room quickly, eyes scanning for movement. Clear. Liv found a half-sectioning console and sat down, tapping keys through cracked plastic. The monitor flickered to life, showing ancient logs and fragmented video files. Callie moved toward a wall of pinned photographs and documents. Most were too water-damaged to read, but one photo stopped her cold. It showed her mother, younger, gaunt, hair pulled back. She stood in a surgical room beside a metal tank filled with fluid, her hands pressed to the glass. Inside the tank floated a fetus with 2 spines. Callie's mouth went dry. The back of the photo read, Subject H3. Final host selected. Calliopean. She turned slowly. "They bred me," she whispered, "from something they dug up." Liv looked over. "You don't have to be what they want." But even as she said it, the monitors began to scream. Motion sensors. Dozens of them. Charlie looked at the screen. "They're surrounding us." "Read?" Liv asked. Callie shook her head. "No, these are different." Then the wall exploded. Glass, steel, flesh. A creature burst through, 10 feet tall, its spine a ridged ladder of bone, arms too long, fingers ending in glassy black hooks. Its face was featureless, save for a vertical split in its forehead that blinked like an eye. Charlie fired twice. The thing didn't fall. It just twitched, took a step back, then screamed, a screeching, bat-like frequency that shattered the console screen. Callie grabbed Liv and ran, barreling down a collapsing hallway as the thing lunged after them behind. Charlie shouted, "Go!" They made it through a stairwell. The door slammed shut. Liv turned to hold it, metal warping under impact. Callie screamed, "Charlie!" But there was no answer, only the thing's screech and then silence. Liv backed away, tears streaking down her face. He stayed behind. Callie swallowed hard. "He bought us time." Liv didn't answer. Something behind her eyes broke. They emerged into the jungle again, under pitch-deck skies. The red light was gone. Now there was only black, total, consuming. Callie could see nothing, but her feet kept moving, drawn forward by something older than memory. They reached the base of the spire. It rose high above them, carved with spiral grooves, each groove filled with teeth, not carvings, real teeth, set into stone like offerings. Callie touched one and felt it hum. A voice whispered in her skull, "Come home." "I think this is it," she said. Liv didn't respond. She was shaking, then she dropped the rebar. "Liv?" Callie turned. Liv's mouth was open in a silent scream. Her eyes had turned completely black. Before Callie could move, Liv lunged, faster than any human should. She slammed Callie against the stone, hands like claws at her throat. "They told me what I was," Liv whispered, voice not her own. "They said I was the first vessel, but I wasn't strong enough. You are." Callie struggled. "Liv, don't. They gave me a choice, die with them or serve. I chose survival." Callie shoved her back with a sudden burst of strength. Liv staggered, blinked, and for one horrible second, her eyes flickered back to normal. Then she screamed, a human scream, and collapsed to her knees. "I didn't want this," she sobbed. "I just wanted to go home." Callie knelt beside her, wrapping arms around the broken girl. "I know," she said. "So did I." Then the ground beneath them split open. A seam tore across the rock, glowing with white-hot veins, and the spires shook. Something beneath them was waking. Liv grabbed Callie's hand, and from the depths, a voice rose. Not sound, but thought. "You are the host." Callie opened her mouth to scream. The heat rising from the crack in the earth was blistering, searing through the soles of Callie's boots, licking up her legs like fire from below. She pulled Liv away from the edge as the stone spire pulsed, each vibration in sync with her heartbeat. Or maybe it wasn't her heart anymore. Maybe it was the island's. They stumbled back into the jungle, but the forest had changed. No wind, no bugs, no sound. Just watching. The trees leaned inward like they wanted to eavesdrop, their bark lined with the same spiraling patterns carved into the spire. Only here, they bled sap that glowed blue in the dark. Callie could barely see. Her eyes ached, her skin buzzed with a low parasitic tremor. She was hot and cold at once. Liv, walking beside her, didn't speak. She hadn't said a word since the voice. Her blackened eyes had faded, but something inside her had not come back, and Callie could feel it. Something had entered her, too. Not all the way, not yet, but the welcome mat was down. They moved quietly, carefully, until they found a stream. Murky, lined with bones, but moving. Callie knelt and splashed the lukewarm water on her face, trying to rinse off the stench of burning metal and scorched flesh. When she looked down, her reflection shimmered unnaturally. The skin beneath her eyes had darkened. Veins crawled up her throat, and for a split second, she saw her mother's face. The same tight jaw, same sloped eyes, but twisted, inhuman. Translucent skin, a second mouth, flickering inside the first. Not real. Not yet, but it was coming. "You okay?" Liv's voice was quiet, thin. Callie nodded without meaning it. "We can't stay here." They pushed forward again, heading toward the only landmark that seemed real, the broken tower in the distance. It rose from the jungle canopy like a lighthouse built for the dead. As they moved, the trees began to hum. Not sound, not really. More like memory. Whispers from the edge of sleep, songs that had no words, the rhythm of a heartbeat that didn't belong to either of them. Callie tried to block it out, but the deeper they walked, the more her legs moved on their own, guided by something she didn't understand. Then they reached a clearing, and in it stood Randy, alive. Callie froze. The old man looked thinner, paler than before, but he stood tall, holding a crooked wooden staff. His clothes were torn and dark with old blood. His eyes were bloodshot but focused. "You made it farther than any of them," he said. Callie stared. How are you still alive?" "They don't want me dead. Not yet," Randy said. "I'm a bridge. Like you. Like her." He nodded toward Liv. "She's not the first they tried, but she might be the last if we don't hurry." Callie stepped closer. "You knew about this? All of this?" "I knew parts. Enough to stay alive, not enough to stop it." Randy turned and walked into the trees, gesturing for them to follow. "They're trying to wake something, Callie. Something older than bones. And you're the key. Not just because you're their experiment, but because you're still half human. You still get to choose." They reached a cave entrance veiled by vines, carved into the side of a hill like an open wound. The air pouring from it was ice cold. Liv hesitated. "We're going down again?" Randy nodded. "It's where they put the engine." Callie blinked. "The what?" "The ritual, the loop. It's not just spiritual, it's mechanical, biological. They built it from pieces of what they found and wired it to bloodlines. Yours. Mine. Hers." Randy paused. "If we break it, we might stop the transformation. For now." They stepped into the dark. The tunnels sloped downward, deeper than any natural cavern. Strange lights pulsed in the walls, phosphorescent tendrils like capillaries, pulsing faster as Callie approached. The walls felt alive. The deeper they went, the more the memories bled in. Visions hit her in flashes, Surgical rooms, tanks of fluid, doctors with no faces, something growing inside her mother, and then a scream. Hers, her mother's, or something else. At the bottom of the tunnel was a chamber, mechanical, cold, a vast circular room filled with machinery unlike anything Callie had ever seen. Part computer, part organic, part relic. A tower of bone and steel rose from the center, humming with life. Embedded into the walls were dozens of bodies, some still breathing, eyes open and blank. Liv gasped. Callie moved closer and recognized Robert, one of their old classmates, presumed dead from the expedition 2 years ago. His mouth twitched when she touched the glass, but he didn't speak. His eyes were gone, replaced by small black lenses. "What the hell is this?" Callie asked. Randy stood by a control panel, fingers trembling. "This is the engine of the island. It's not just here to harvest. It's here to evolve. And we're the ingredients." He pointed at a cluster of tubes descending into the spire. "That's where they want to send you. Connect you. Permanently." Liv backed away. "No, we burn it. Now." "There's a sequence," Randy said, "but it has to be done from inside. Someone has to enter and override it with blood." Callie knew before he finished. He meant her. "Of course you do," she whispered. "Because I'm the only one who survived the original pairing." Randy looked at her with sorrow. "You're not a victim, Callie. You're a key. And keys unlock cages," she said bitterly. She turned to Liv. "If I go in, if I don't come back, shut it. Burn everything." Liv hesitated. "What if it kills you?" Callie smiled. "Then let it." She stepped onto the platform. The moment her foot touched the bone, the room reacted. Lights surged. The tower opened like a blooming flower of sinew and steel. And inside, a pod, waiting. Callie stepped forward. Then, a gunshot. Callie turned, just in time to see Randy slump to the ground. Standing behind him was Reed. No mask now. His face was pale, stretched, skin flaking, eyes rimmed in black veins. He smiled. "You're not going anywhere." Liv screamed. Callie lunged. Reed raised the pistol, aimed at her head, and then everything went white. There was no sound in the white, only the throb, a low, inescapable thump that pulsed through Callie's spine like a second heartbeat. One, not her own. Her eyes opened slowly, vision hazy, soaked in sterile light. The ceiling above her was bone white, veined like marbled flesh. A strange fluid clung to her arms, thick as sap, tingling where it touched bare skin. She sat up. The room was not the engine room. It was somewhere deeper, colder. Circular again, but this time formed entirely from biological architecture. No stone, no metal, just tissue, muscle. The walls breathed. Inhale, exhale. Slow, rhythmic. She could hear it. She was inside something, someone. Her own body felt distant, like her limbs were an afterthought. Her skin was paler, translucent. Through her fingertips, she could see faint blue lines spidering under the surface. Her blood, or not. The pod had opened while she was unconscious. It now stood behind her, slick with residue. She had been taken into the system. Callie stood up, wobbling at first. Her mind screamed to panic, to run, but her body wouldn't obey. The part of her that was still human was shrinking, drowned under a tide of ancestral rot and genetic purpose. Then the voice returned. Inside her head, "You are the fruit of failed rituals, the sum of perfect errors. You were built for us." She clenched her teeth. "I wasn't built for anyone." The voice chuckled. It sounded like her mother and herself and something else all at once. "You've seen your reflection, felt the rhythms, you know the pattern. You are already more us than them." A wall across from her peeled open with a sickening squelch. A hallway appeared, lit by soft blue glow from living tissue, with sigils etched into the pulsing flesh. With no other option, she walked. The corridor twisted and turned like an intestinal path. Along the walls, she passed echoes of herself, memories stored like photographs in moving gel. One image showed her as a child, crying under a table. Another curled beside her mother's coffin. One by one, they flickered, then corrupted. In each, her features slowly shifted, eyes darkened, skin peeled back to reveal what lay underneath. Each memory rewritten. The farther she walked, the more she forgot which ones had ever been real. Then came the chamber. It was massive, hollowed out like the inside of a cathedral's skull. In the center stood a construct, neither alive nor dead, but eternal, a monument of flesh and bone and circuitry, suspended in coils of fluid that moved like amniotic tides. And bound to its base, Liv. Her arms spread in cruciform fashion, vines sunk into her wrists. Her face was pale, lips trembling, her eyes distant but alive. "Callie," she whispered, hoarse. Callie ran forward, but her legs slowed involuntarily the closer she got. The construct shifted, turned, reacted, and then spoke, not in words but in comprehension. "She is the catalyst, but you are the continuity." The tendrils hanging from the ceiling pulsed. Above the construct, a shape descended, almost humanoid, cloaked in layers of transparent tissue. It hovered just above the ground, tendrils sprouting from its back. No face, only a vertical slit that glowed dimly. A mirror of her future. Callie could feel it. A version of herself that had gone too far. Given in. This was what waited at the end of the ritual. It approached, and for the first time, it knelt before her. "Accept the offering. Become what you were meant to be." Behind her, the walls whispered. They repeated a name she had heard only once, in the files she stole from her mother's drawer as a teenager. Project Echo. A multi-generational experiment. Test subjects bred through ritual selection and genetic pairing. Callie hadn't been born. She had been assigned. Her mother, one of the last vessels capable of holding what they called cognitive resonance. Her father, never listed, unknown, or possibly non-human. Callie's hands trembled. "Let her go," she said, staring at the being above Liv. "Take her place." Callie shook her head. The being tilted its head, curious. "You care for her." "I love her." Irrelevant. Flesh decays. Patterns persist. Callie stepped forward. "You want continuity?" She reached into her pocket and pulled out something she had kept since Chapter 1, the bone shard. Sharp, ragged, engraved with sigils that matched the walls. The only thing her mother had told her never to lose. It pulsed in her hand. The construct recoiled slightly. Callie slammed the shard into her own chest. Pain, electric, divine. For a moment, the entire chamber froze. The tendril shuddered. The being above shrieked, not in pain, but in rage. The walls rippled. Liv screamed. The shard melted into her skin, branding itself across her heart. And then, override acknowledged. Callie's eyes turned black but not hollow. Alive, still hers. The chamber collapsed. The moment the shard fused into her chest, Callie felt everything. Every life, every failure, every ritual. She screamed, not in pain, but in a kind of revelation. Her body convulsed, blood boiling with ancient blue fire as the sigils on her arms lit up like constellations. They weren't wounds anymore, they were coordinates, an ancient sequence rewritten onto flesh. The chamber was falling apart, flesh peeled from the walls. Screams echoed from behind the walls, millions of them, all voices of former vessels who had failed to contain the pattern. The construct began to collapse, its tendrils flailing, wrapping around itself in panicked knots. Liv was still bound, unconscious. Vines crawled deeper into her veins. Callie stumbled toward her, each step pulling blood from her nose, her eyes. Her skin flickered, between her own and something else. Bone cracked beneath her ribs, rearranging. The shard had awakened more than knowledge. It had started the final phase. You came back, Liv whispered weakly. I never left, Callie said, slicing the bindings with the edge of her own burning palm. The vines recoiled from her touch, as if recognizing something higher. You're changing. Callie helped her up. I don't have time to explain, just follow my voice. Behind them, the construct unleashed a guttural, inhuman howl. The entity that once mirrored her now stood in the crumbling chamber, aflame, but not burning. Its face, if it ever had one, had split open into a dozen eyes, each watching a different time, a creature unbound by singular perception. She broke the rhythm, it shrieked, its voice layered across dimensions. She corrupted the continuity. Tendrils shot toward them. Callie turned, raised her arm and spoke, not in English, but in the glyph language that had haunted her dreams since childhood. The tendrils froze midair. I'm not your vessel, she said. I'm your reckoning. And she turned them to ash. She led Liv through a side tunnel that tore open in the wall like a bleeding wound. It was collapsing fast. The deeper they ran, the more unstable reality became. Floors twisted upward. Gravity flipped in pulses. Space bent. Somewhere far behind, the core of the ritual engine collapsed in on itself. But the deeper Callie went, the more her mind began to slip. Memories bled. Her own name began to feel foreign. She saw flashes, 1,000 versions of herself across time, across worlds, all running the same ritual, all failing, all becoming the thing she now resisted. She clung to Liv's hand like an anchor. If she let go, she knew she'd vanish into the pattern. They emerged from the biological maze into a chamber lined with monoliths, each a recording of failed subjects, frozen mid-ritual. Some bore her face, others bore half her face. A voice greeted them. It wasn't the entity. It was Abdul, or at least what was left of him. He stood at the center, wired into the last control node. His body was partially fused with the machinery, eyes black, lips stitched, yet somehow still aware. You shouldn't have come this far, he rasped. Why did you lie to us? Callie asked, her voice like thunder. You knew what this place was. I didn't lie, Abdul said. I led you here because you're the only one who could end it. I'm the last remnant of the human oversight team. I failed. Callie stepped forward. Tell me how to shut it down. You can't shut it down, Abdul said. You can only replace it. The engine needs a consciousness to sustain the pattern. Without it, the anomaly expands. Callie's stomach twisted. That was the final truth. She hadn't been brought here to end anything. She had been brought here to inherit it. Liv grabbed her arm. No, you can't. There has to be another way. There isn't, Callie said. Her voice was calm now, steady, as if part of her had always known. Abdul looked at her. You've already begun the transformation. The system recognized your sequence. You're compatible. You're the last node. A panel opened behind him. It revealed a pod, larger than the others, pulsing with blue light, lined with veins and metal filaments, waiting. Liv stepped in front of Callie. You're not doing this. Callie smiled faintly. If I don't, it spreads. If I stay, it ends here. I'll stay with you, Liv said. No, Callie shook her head. That's how they win. Through inheritance, you have to break the chain. Liv's eyes brimmed with tears. I can't lose you again. Callie leaned forward, pressed her forehead to Liv's. You won't. You'll remember me, right? Liv nodded. Then Callie stepped back and entered the pod. As soon as she did, the walls responded. The monoliths flared. Abdul collapsed, his body disintegrating into dust. The engine resumed its pulse, steady, no longer broken. Inside the pod, Callie's body went still, but her mind expanded. She saw it all. The rituals, the blueprints, the echoes of civilizations that had tried and failed to contain the same pattern. She saw Jarabi and other islands like it, other vessels like her. She was now part of it, not consumed, but in control. Outside, Liv screamed her name one last time, and the chamber sealed shut, swallowing her voice. The island trembled. From its core, a massive signal pulse launched into the sky, part biological, part digital, shooting beyond the atmosphere like a flare. In a government base miles away, a red light blinked. Subject node accepted. Pattern reset. In progress. Then, far away, a man in a gray suit picked up a phone. "She's in," he said. "Phase 3 begins now." Thank you for staying with us until the very end of this descent into the unknown. What you've just witnessed is more than a story. It's a warning, a whisper buried in blood-soaked soil, a signal flickering beneath the surface of reality. To those who dared to follow, Kali, and live into the heart of Jarrett B., to those who held their breath as truths unraveled and flesh remembered. Thank you. This story was born from the shadows of ritual horror, survival instinct, and the haunting question, what lies beneath the mask of inheritance? If it unsettled you, thrilled you, or made you glance over your shoulder just once, then it did what it was meant to do. Special thanks to everyone who supported this project, from late-night readers to deep divers of dread. Your curiosity fuels the next descent. And remember, some doors close, others simply wait. Until next time, stay sharp, stay human, and never trust a quiet island with no birds.